A pie chart is a good way to represent certain types of data. So let's take this data, which shows some numbers and the amount spent on the call in February. I'm going to go to Insert, and under pie, you'll see there's a whole bunch of pie charts. We'll get onto a few of them just now, but let's just do a standard 2D pie. When I click on it, we get the following chart. What this chart is showing is which phone calls are being made, or what is the most expensive phone number, what number do we call most often. Remember, you can customize what it looks like with the chart layout. So let's look in here, and perhaps you can find something that looks like what you want. So maybe that one, click, hit it. Perhaps that's not quite right. Maybe that one. You can see what it's done is put, in this case, the percentages within the series. If you need to customize that, you can click, in this case, on the data labels, right click, go to Format Data Labels, and decide what you want to show. So perhaps you want to show some other items, where you want to put it. The majority of these items are fairly standard. What is different with a pie chart is if I right click on the series and I say Format Data Series, you'll see the full border colors, etc. These are all standard, but the series options for each chart type will be slightly different. So in this case, you'll see we talk about the angle of the first slice. The first slice is this item here, and you'll see it starts at the very top, pointing upwards. I can say, let's rotate it a bit. So I'm going to click on here, and you'll see as I move it along, the rotation changes. So that first slice, now perhaps we want it to appear over there at 90 degrees. So you can customize where the slices should appear. You'll also see that we've got an option relating to the pie explosion. So at the moment, it's set as together. When I click on it and maybe move it along, what it does is it explodes outwards. So you can go to the absolute extreme. We can put it all back together, so we've got a single slice. Because of the nature of pie charts, in this case you don't have an option to split the axes. Just closing it. Be aware as well that you can click on a particular series. So we've clicked on all the series. I click again. Only that series is highlighted. And you can click and drag that particular one out. So you can explode the chart manually. So perhaps these two items you want to expand on. Just undo those two. Let's look at some of the other pie charts available. So I'm going to go to Change Chart Type. And with the pie, you'll see we've got a 3D version. And then we've got some interesting ones. There's something called a pie of pie. That's just an exploded pie. And there's this other one called a bar of pie. The bar of pie and pie of pie are very similar. I'm going to choose this one. Say OK. What you'll see now is we have a pie chart. But what it has done is taken some of the items out of the list, put them into a common area, and then expanded them in a bar chart. Now if we right click on the series, so I go to Series and I say Format Data Series, you'll see I have a number of new options. First thing, it says Series Options. It says split the series by position. And the second plot contains the last 4 values. What you'll see is because of the way the data is set up, the main pie will contain these numbers, and the last 4 items have been combined into this segment and split up over here. You can change that. So let's say I want it to contain only the last 3. If you watch what's happening there, I change that to 3, and you'll see the chart changes. Let's change it back to 4. You'll see that you don't have to use the position. If we click here, we can tell it to do it by value. Now in this case, the values are going to be the same because the value is in ascending order. But you'll see here the option is second plot contains all values less than, and you can now decide. So let's say we want all values less than 50, for example. When we do that, any number or any value less than 50, in this case coincidentally the last 4, will be extracted. Maybe let's do values less than 100. So you'll see there's only one value more than 100. All the rest are now shown in the bar chart. Let's go back to 50. Let's see what else we can do. There's an item here called percentage value. Same basics. It looks at the percentage and decides what belongs where. And we can say the second plot contains all values less than 10%. Depending on what the percentage is, the numbers will be pushed backwards and forwards through here. The last option to split the series bar is something called custom. And you'll see it tells you to select a data point to move between plots. I'm going to say close. Let's say based on this, we actually want this item to be back in the main area. I click once. You'll see we're now on the data point. I right click, I say format data point, and you'll see it now says the split series by custom. Where do you want this point to belong? At the moment it's belonging to the second plot. We can say no, please can you move that to the first plot, and you'll see it's pulled out of the bar and into the par. Perhaps this bigger one you actually want to move out of the par into the bar. Same logic, click on the data point, so it's only activated that data point, right click, say format data point, and in this case the point is going to belong to, I'm going to put it in the second plot, and you'll see the chart adjusts itself. Just getting back to the overall formatting, if I click on the series, right click and say format data series, there are some options lower down. So you'll see we can again control the pie explosion. So as we move, the pie explodes or doesn't. The new option here is something called gap width, which is the width between the pie and the bar. At the moment it's set at 150. If I move it, you'll see the gap increases. Or at an extreme, let's make it 0, and you'll see they're basically on top of each other. Go back to format data series. The gap width, let's just make it a bit more reasonable again, 150. We can also decide what the second plot size must be. At the moment it's set at small. Let's click on it and just move it along, and you'll see we can make it grow. And perhaps you want to emphasize that particular plot. You can see you can keep going to a fairly significant amount. So you can control these pie charts to the nth degree.